everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Nikki, it's a big, very big week this week because we have a guest who's back who's just crested the 5-time. This is the 6th episode that this particular guest is back. I believe it is number 6. Maybe number 5. But either way, there should be a jacket involved.
There should be a jacket.
Some sort of but one of them really dragged, and it felt like 2.
It was probably the one that I was not in. The
right.
one that I was sick.
That was a banger. People are still downloading that one. That's all I know. Anyway, we're very excited. We're going to be talking about productivity today and the productivity trap. And I'm very excited to do that. Today, we are thrilled to welcome back a true friend of the show, Dr. Ari Tuckman, clinical psychologist, author, international speaker. Ari has dedicated his career to helping adults with ADHD live more successful, satisfying lives. He's the author of 4 essential books on ADHD, a leading voice in the ADHD community, and as of today, a 5-time guest on the ADHD podcast. We're excited to have him back with us to talk about one of the biggest pain points for people with ADHD, the trap of productivity. Hi, Ari.
It is always awesome to be here with you guys.
Welcome
it's
back.
Absolutely our treat. I guess I'm gonna hand this to Nikki because this comes up. I think, in spite of the fact that I live with it every day, I think it comes up for Nikki writ large because I know I'm not the only one dealing with the trap of productivity. How did this episode come about? Kick us off.
Every day. I think our clients deal with this, right? Yeah. Well, Ari, you have something new you want to share, right? That's coming out. And this is how this came about. So tell us about this new book.
Yeah. So I've got a brand new book. It's called the ADHD Productivity Manual. It's actually the Kindle book as of this recording is available for pre-order, but the paperback and the everywhere else is going to be available like May 7th, May 9th, something like that. But it's really about like getting things done. And it's one of those things that trouble with getting things done is the biggest complaint by adults with ADHD. It's also the biggest complaint about adults with ADHD, right? That there is also that kind of social component. And what I wanted to do was to write a book that covered all these different areas, right? Like there's so much that affects what you do in this moment and in this moment and in this moment and in this moment, right? So it's not a TikTok video. It's not like the top 10 list, it's more than that. And I wound up with 36 kind of short chapters, but like I covered 36 different areas that affect your ability to get stuff done and try to do it with more depth than just this kind of stupid, obvious advice that never really works. And frankly, is sort of insulting because like, obviously you thought about this already and someone else in your life has already said like, get a to-do list or something. So like, you don't need to be told that again. And I just kind of poured all of this, 25 years worth of working with adults with ADHD, and just kind of poured it into this book. And I'm super psyched to get it out there.
Oh, we're excited to see it. So, like you said, people who have ADHD and people who live with ADHD, this is an issue of being productive. So what makes it so hard for ADHDers to be productive or to find their groove, to get started and all of that?
Yeah. I mean, so let's just start by saying this is kind of a line I came up with when I was writing my book before, but like ADHD doesn't invent new problems. It just exacerbates the universal ones, right? So some of this is just true for all people, right? None of us are perfect. We all have our moments. Folks with ADHD have those moments more often and possibly in more visible ways. So, but I mean, it's everything from just the sort of basic stuff, like the fundamental stuff of ADHD, of trouble with sort of tracking time and feeling the future, right? So, like, I should really work on this thing that's due in a week, but this Instagram sure is interesting, you know? Or, oh, remember when you go to the meeting, you have to bring, whatever. And, if you show up without it, it's a big problem, right? So some of it is just that sort of fundamental distractibility and impulsivity of ADHD.
Mhm.
But then you get into other stuff of like, kind of I mentioned to-do lists and schedules and alarms, right? These are all great, right? We all
Mhm.
know this is kind of obvious, helpful stuff. But the problem is they only work when you use them,
Right.
So if you don't think ahead of like, "Ooh, I need to put this into my calendar," or I need to not just have it in my calendar, I also need to factor in travel time, and I also need to factor in the getting ready, and I also need to, right? Like, so it's not
Mhm.
just about because like I don't know, who was I talking to? Some client yesterday, and he set an alarm for 3:30, which was the moment the thing was going to happen, right? That he was
Right.
just going to like stand up and be there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, like there's stuff like that of like, when do you set the alarm for and what else is
Mhm.
going to be going on, right? So, like, there's an art to that.
And that's what you mean by going deeper in some of this stuff. It's not just, oh, set an alarm or a reminder to do something. Like we need
Yeah.
to really be more thoughtful about how many reminders, when they're being uh, uh, put off or whatever I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
exactly, right? Because
Hmm.
if the alarm goes off when you're in the car, right, that's not
Yeah.
helpful.
Right.
It's just annoying.
Yeah. Right.
So, so like, absolutely, there's some sort of thinking ahead that goes along with that.
Hmm.
Not to mention all the kind of, frankly, rather mixed feelings you might have about these tools, right?
Hmm.
Like, there's a part of you that kind of recognizes, like, yeah, it's probably helpful. And there's a part of you that's like, God, I freaking hate these and they just stress me out,
Right. They've never
Yeah.
worked.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not even like a love hate. It's more like a vague fondness, I suppose I have to slash hate kind of
Hmm.
relationship, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
There's a funny thing. Like I look at it like the when we first got the Apple Watch, right? It's been, a
mm,
better part of a decade now, and it has these stand alerts, right? To remind you
Hmm.
to stand up
mm,
at the bottom half of every hour. Just go ahead and stand up for a minute. And the number of people who were really upset about that, like it was just too much. My watch is annoying me. Everything's terrible. The world is ending.
right.
And my sort of constant refrain is, what would happen if you actually stood up for 1 minute at the end of every hour? How would that change how you feel? Like, what if instead of being sort of resentful of this alert, would you find maybe there's a reason for it and that your body
Uh-huh.
needs to stand up every hour? And the number of people who said, "Oh, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe if I rewire that." Same thing goes with calendars. Like, if I have found that if I don't have a multi-page scroll of alarms in my past alarms in my phone app, I'm doing it wrong. Like, I have to have all the alarms all the time. I have the
Right.
default set on my calendar to give me multiple alerts, right? An hour before, it's set to wherever I'm going. It says, here is how long it takes in today's traffic. You should leave right now. 10 minutes before you
Uh-huh.
leave now. Like, you have to have scaffolding to build the building, right?
Hmm.
And the alarms are
Yeah.
my scaffolding. I have no building without scaffolding.
Hmm.
And I
And
think
there's an
that piece, Ari,
acceptance.
is the resentment, right? It's like the gap between, having the scaffolding and being willing to accept it and adapt to it and use it is I think a hard part. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it absolutely is. I think that for maybe some younger adults, there's this thing of I don't think I need it, whereas everyone else be like, no, dude, you do.
Yeah.
Some of it is that. I think there's a resentment of, God damn it, why do I have to use this? I think
Hmm.
there can be sort of a shame or embarrassment. Like, I don't like the idea that I have to use it. And certainly don't want anyone else to see that I use it. Right. So there's kind of that level of it as well. I think there's also a feeling often of I've been told by so many people that I have to use this that I just don't want to. Right. There's that
Hmm.
kind of oppositional, like, I'm
Hmm.
tired of being told what to do, especially in like kind of a righteous sort of, judgy way. So, like there's all that psychology that gets kind of wrapped into this. And I think it becomes a matter of recognizing it as I'm not setting alarms for other people. I'm doing this for me. Like, I
Yes.
prefer the outcome when I set alarms versus when I don't. Right? Like, that's the key, so that's
Yeah.
one part of it. I think on the social front, like I kind of mentioned that embarrassment, But the thing is, it is way better to be known as that person who sets a lot of alarms rather than that person who doesn't show up for things, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Like,
Right.
that's a no-brainer. And
Yeah.
especially if you just in an offhand way, you're just like, "Oh, yeah, I set a lot of alarms. Helps me, I get kinda caught up in stuff. This way I make sure I get to your thing."
Mhm.
Nobody's gonna have a negative thought about that. Everyone's gonna think, "Wow, that's awesome. Also, shit, maybe I need to set some alarms."
Maybe I need
Mhm.
alarms. Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm. So you mentioned the social side of productivity. Can you talk a little bit more
Mhm.
about what that means?
Yeah, and this is like a whole section in the book
Okay.
because it absolutely this is important, right? Like the obvious part is it's probably good to become more productive, right? Which is sort of like a duh, right? Um, but because we don't live alone, right? Like you don't live on an island by yourself. You have to interact with other people. Everybody has opinions about everything, number
Mhm.
one. And other people are going to have expectations for you. Maybe that's the people you live with. Maybe it's the people you work with, or if you go to school, whatever, right? So, like, people will have expectations about you doing things just as you have expectations for them. So, on the one hand, like, you do want to be a good team player. I said I'd
Mhm.
get you this thing. Yeah, here it is. Or this is my job to do this thing. I'm going to get it to you by the deadline. Um, but also, sometimes it's not actually a thing that you wanna do. Like, I've decided I'm not committed to this idea, or this is not of interest to me, and I'm gonna make a decision that I'm not gonna do this thing, right?
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be a part of this project, or I'll get it to you, but it's definitely not Friday, maybe Tuesday. Um, but do you have the sort of social standing to be able to do that, right? If you feel like you're always behind the 8 ball on stuff, you might feel like you can't say no.
Right.
Um, which
The people
best
pleasing.
case
Mhm.
Mhm.
yeah, exactly, right? So best case, you make yourself miserable getting it done. Worst case is you can't pull it off, right? It is doomed to fail because there's just not enough time for it. And then you fall short, and then it just proves again how you're not reliable, right? So, like,
Mm.
you start in the hole. Now, if anything, you're deeper in the hole. So, part of what I talk about in the book is this thing of like, how do you handle the social thing? Like, how much you let other people vote on how productive you need to be? Are you able to sort of disappoint people? And if you are, is it your problem to fix? Because maybe it isn't,
Mhm. Oh, I
like if
love that
someone,
you say that. I
yeah.
love that you say that because that is something that, as a parent, we have adopted with our children, and I can see doing this, like, with other commitments, y do we is this our problem to solve? Is this our problem to take on? Is this our problem to have to worry about? And half of the time, I would say more than half the time, it's not our problem, it's their problem, and we need to be there, to pick up the pieces if we have to be or have
Mhm.
to. But that I love that you say that. It's just a different context of putting that in your
Yeah.
schedule, like how you're designing your schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, and that you have a right sometimes to say no.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
Now, if it's your boss, that might be a little bit harder, but I think you might still be able to make a case to say, like, hey,
Mhm.
boss, if I do this, I can't get to these things. So you tell me what's more important. But certainly if it's a spouse or a coworker or something that is a more relationship of equals, like you have the right to say, I don't really want to do this. This is not of interest to me.
Mhm.
Or I'll do it, but under these circumstances. And I think that that is a part of what gets lost if you feel like you're always sort of scrambling to keep up, that like you don't have that kind of social capital to
Mhm.
sort of hold your line.
Mhm. So something that I've noticed with the people that I work with is they'll come and we'll talk about the tools and we'll talk about the systems and with our book we'll talk about our method that we help them with. But what we find in a lot of cases is that it's not the tools, it's not even the process you're going through. They have too much that they are expecting of themselves. It is so unfair, and yet they either they take the blame of that they're doing something wrong, or the tool's not working, I need to get a new one. So I'm curious, do you talk about that in the book, about like what is realistic? What can a person plan and do and feel good about when they have to disappoint or say no?
Uh-huh. Absolutely. And like you're nailing it here, right? Like these
Mhm.
are all the things, right? Because again, that fantasy of I just need to be more productive, everything is going to be great, right? People won't be disappointed in me, everything is going to be fine, I'll get done all the things I need to do. Like again, there's something to that, but there comes a point where it's like it doesn't matter how productive you are, there are still hard choices to be made. There will
Mhm.
always be more ideas than time, right? And sometimes it's painful to let some of those things go, or it
Mhm.
takes some real cognitive work to sort out like, okay, I can't do all of these. What am I going to do? What am I not? It might take some emotional work to kind of accept the fact of like, I really like, I hate the fact that I can't do this, but also I know this is not a good idea. Like, this is not what's best for me,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
whatever reasons. So,
said
like,
said me never.
right. So, like, that's the thing, right? It's like it is work to do that, to
Yeah.
decide what to take on and what not to. And if you set the bar too high, you will always be disappointed. But
Mhm.
I think that there's that hope that if I set the bar high and then I clear it, then I will feel good about myself, right?
Mhm.
And like
Mhm.
there is a logic to it, but there also comes a point of saying like, no, this is okay. Like this is okay, or I am okay in this situation, or I'm
Mhm.
going to be happy in my life in this situation, and to recognize while these might be interesting things that have some benefit, this really is what's important to me.
Mhm.
Right, so that
Mhm.
whole thing of, like, expectations is incredibly important in terms of right? Happiness is a function of expectations versus experience, and
Yeah.
if you feel
Yeah.
like you have to be perfect, you're never gonna get there, and you're always gonna be dissatisfied.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I've noticed where somebody will have a really good day, right? And they're just on it and they're getting all this stuff done and they're so productive. And then the next day it just goes, "Roop,"
Mhm.
and then they're disappointed because, why can't I do that again? Why can't I
Sure.
duplicate that?
This is the
Pete?
curse of
Yeah.
intermittent reinforcement, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I've done it once and felt that rush of what it's like to feel successful when I clear the bar, my
Yeah.
expectation is cemented that surely I can do this again and again
Right.
and again, repeat. And
Yeah.
that is more consistently reinforced not to be accurate. But the real turmoil I find comes when I exist in the eye of the storm that is made up of all the things, as you were saying, that I want to do, right? All of the projects that my brain is telling me are amazing and they're going to be great, and all the things that I need to do as a function of my job, but I'm too oppositionally defiant to actually do them. And that leads to a very special sort of bundle of shame related paralysis that
Yeah.
I feel like we should at least address, because I can't imagine that I'm alone.
Right. No, I mean, absolutely, right? That like, all the I mean, I'm a psychologist, so like obviously I'm gonna say this, but like,
Mm.
what happens in the moment isn't just about the moment.
Right.
It's about all the other stuff that gets attached to it for good or bad reasons, but it does. So, so that's part of it also, because on the surface you might look at it and say, well, that's pretty easy to figure out, but yet somehow we get stuck and tangled up and things get messier. So, anytime we're having feelings that seem out of proportion of what's happening specifically in this situation, we need to kind of look inside and like, okay, so wait, what else is going on here?
And what does that look like to illuminate some of the persistent patterns that you see, right? Like, what are you, if we were to create kind of a template for folks who are listening to sort of see themselves in, maybe in the spirit of giving them a rope,
hmm
right, what does it look, how do you interrupt this pattern?
I mean, the first place it starts is just awareness, as in, I am aware that this is what's happening. Right. And awareness is always the first step. Because if you're not aware, then things just go, like you don't nowhere to intervene if you don't have some sense of, oh, wait a second, something is happening here. Let me take a look and figure it out.
Hmm.
So, I mean, part of, just sort of in general in the book, right, I cover lots of areas because I want people to have lots of things to look for, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's something like, this isn't the right planner for or schedule system for me, or I'm being perfectionistic about this, or whatever it is.
Right.
But to be able to be
Mhm.
like, ooh, wait a second, that is a thing that looks familiar. Um, because if you're clear on what's going on, then at least you're in the ball game of doing something about it,
Mhm.
and being
Yeah.
being able to recognize like what is the situation that I know to be true? What is it about? Like, what am I adding into this?
Mhm.
Right.
Um,
Right. You trigger the next sort of thought on perfectionism, because perfectionism as a symptom of ADHD is a way to attempt to regain control and
yeah,
in our lives and in our productivity. I think leads to this discussion of how do you retune your expectation to know that good enough doesn't have to be perfect, and that maybe
yeah.
there is no aspirational perfect. How do you adapt to know when good enough is good enough?
Yeah, and the thing of it is, it's about stepping back, right? Because this is not the only thing you need to do this week, right? If it is, then
Mhm.
just like hell, take the whole week, make it
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Right.
But like never, right? Never is that the reality of your life, right? You
Mhm.
don't have
Yeah.
that luxury ever. So it's more a matter of like, how does this fit compared to the rest of what I got? You
Hmm.
know,
Mhm.
is this really worth the extra time? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that requires stopping, pausing, and thinking, what else do I got? What do I need to do? How important is this to me? How important is this to the person I'm doing it for? Um, what else do I need to do? Right. Because there's that mental math, right? How does this fit within the bigger context? There's also just that sort of hyper focus, losing track of time. So it's not a perfectionism in that case. You're just caught up in it,
Hmm.
like losing track, or it's just you've made it really interesting, which is great because now you're motivated to do it, but maybe now you're too interested in it.
Mhm.
And can't let
Mhm.
it go.
Yeah. Or I don't know, like Russ Ramsey has talked about this kind of like social capital thing where someone he used to work at Penn in the counseling center. He give the example, a student is late on their 3 to 5 page paper. They talk to the professor, they get an extension, and then they had the idea I need to give them a 5 to 10 page paper, to make up for the fact that
To
I got it to them late.
overcompensate.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
then,
Yeah.
Russ is like, well, wait a second, did they tell you it needs to be wait, they didn't tell you? Like, why are you
Yeah.
if you have to do a 10 page paper, you're not gonna be done in the 2 day extension. What are you doing? So
Yeah.
that kind of like noticing like, oh, wait a second, I'm overdoing this, but not for the right reasons.
You know what I find so interesting, and this goes back from one of our shows with you a long time ago, and that's the lying episode. And
Mm,
what I find fascinating is I will walk through with them their list, and they'll have like, let's say 30, 40 things on their today list. And we'll go through them and we'll talk about these questions that you're bringing up, right? Where does this
yeah.
fit? How does this work? And it's fascinating to me, they'll convince me that it's just as important as everything else. And so
Yeah.
now I'm
Sure.
looking at this list of 30 things and I'm like, oh, dang, what are we going to do? Like,
Right. Rescue child from burning building. Yep, can't take
Yeah.
that one
Right.
off.
No,
yeah,
Right.
gotta check it
yeah,
off.
you can't
Right.
take that off.
And
And
Yep.
she
you can't take this off. And oh, you have a really good argument for this. So I'm
Hmm.
just curious, like, how do we get really honest with ourselves? How do we really get to the core of, the burning child is more important than the garage that has been a mess for the last 3
Sure.
years,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Yeah, but Martha Stewart and a photo crew are gonna show up any day now, so you
Yes.
Yes.
gotta clear
So
out
it's
You be
your
really
arms,
ready.
right.
Photo
important.
ready at all
Yeah.
Yeah,
times.
they might show up, you never know.
Yeah.
So, like, but this is part of it, right? It's editing down to-do lists, right? And the obvious way is, "Ta-da, I finished that, done." But part of a good like, to-do lists are a dynamic tool, right? Like,
Mhm.
that sometimes, well, first of all, sometimes we don't put it on the to-do list in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
as in like, it's a nice idea, but nope, not going to happen. Never going to get to it. Not good enough. Don't even write it down.
Yeah.
But sometimes ideas get put on that maybe were actually a pretty reasonable idea at the moment you added them, but like life moves on and you're
Yeah.
like,
It
that is no
changes.
longer relevant. Right.
Mhm.
So
Or
like,
right now in this moment. Yeah.
right, right. Like delete, like you are
Mhm.
allowed to cross things off your to-do list without having done them.
Can you say
And
that
it
again?
doesn't mean, yeah, you're
Yeah,
allowed to
right.
cross stuff off without having done it. And it doesn't mean you failed. Right? Like,
Right.
but that's this sort of ADHD baggage of, there's so much I didn't do. So this is another one. Here we go again. If I keep it on there, I keep the hope alive that maybe one day I'll get to it. But the thing of it is, when you have a bunch of extra junk on your to do list, besides the fact that it just stresses you out and makes you feel bad to look at it, it also hides the things that are really worthwhile. So part of
Yes.
having a good to do list is spending the time occasionally to dump stuff off and to just say
Yeah.
like that is never going to happen,
Mhm.
right? It is a nice idea. It would be lovely. It is never going to happen. These things are more important. The way it goes.
Absolutely. And I think the key too is getting them to understand if you have a system in place to remind you of these things later when you want to be reminded, that's good because that's part of the problem is that most people they're so afraid that they're going to forget. And so they want everything on the list. But what I'll say and what you're confirming is that clutters that list of the things that are truly important. And so if
Yeah.
we can find a different way of holding that information in a different place that doesn't clutter the day to day, because then you're
Yeah.
really getting to see what needs to be done. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fine to have like a second or third list, but
Or just
it's
a different
not
place
in
to
your
put it. Yeah.
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
right. But it's not in your active, here's the thing I'm using
That I need to
list.
be productive today. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the I just don't want to do it?
Yeah.
What do
Well,
you do with that? Do you have a section of
I
in your book about
I
that?
Yeah, I don't
do.
wanna.
I just don't
Yeah, I
want to.
do. Yeah, I do have a chapter called something like "How to Make Yourself Do the Things You Hate" or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a real thing, right? Turns
Right.
out life has boring stuff you don't wanna do. So, um, you know what? Maybe the answer is this is not a thing you're gonna do, right? Like, just to kinda cut to it, maybe that's it, right? It's like, I don't wanna do this, and I'm not gonna, and I need to be able to find a way to be okay with it, right? Sometimes that's the answer.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes the answer is you just got to bite the bullet. You just got to do it. You need to remind yourself of like, what are the benefits of doing this and why am I doing it? And how do I sort of fire up my motivation to get it done?
Mhm.
So accountability partners or killing distractions or doing it when things are quiet and your meds are doing their best or
Mhm.
right. So ways of sort of tipping the odds.
Mhm.
Um, but maybe what it reflects is I had to like, I don't know exactly what I need to do here. This is kind of ambiguous. It's not clear to me what the demands are or how it needs to be done. And that's stressing me out. So maybe I need to figure that out and then, do it. And,
Yeah.
but that might be a situation where you're self conscious to ask, like, hey, boss, tell me again, like, what are the specs on this? Like, what do you need? Because that might look like you're not paying attention in the meeting and I
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
it. It's smart. You don't want to, reveal the fact that you weren't listening in the meeting. The problem is giving your boss something with the wrong specs kind of like lets the cat out of the bag anyway. So it's
Right.
better to ask early and come across as conscientious with good intentions.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that. Maybe there's a
Mhm.
way to sort of do this in a smaller, less painful kind of a way. So, kind of the simple example is I'm not baking cookies for the bake sale. Like, screw that. I'm going to go buy
Mhm.
some. Right.
Mhm.
And maybe they're not
Mhm.
amazing, but like, seriously, this is as good as it's going to get. Either
Yeah.
that or like, a handful. I'm just going to give you a handful of change out of the, ashtray in my car and call it a day. But like, is
Mhm.
there a way to do this so you can participate or whatever that isn't, the awful, like, you know, I'm going to hate this. Why did I sign up for this?
Yeah. Yeah. Ah,
I
all good
I
stuff.
can't let go of the perfectionism bit, and because I'm
Ugh.
perseverating on it, and in the context of everything that you've said is I find fascinating. So I'm going to talk out loud for a bit and see if sense comes
Yeah,
out. The
do it.
I find when I am in a mode where I can't let go of a project, in what I think might be sort of objectively defined as a perfectionist mode, it's usually because I'm not admitting to myself that I'm not taking into account the rest of my schedule and that I'm afraid of something on it, right? That I am there's a clogging task down the road, and if I let go of this one thing, then I'm going to have to face it, and I don't want to face it. And that I think is my aha bit of awareness about myself, that sometimes saying good enough unlocks something even harder on the other side of it, a bigger boss that I have to fight. And that's a thing that my lizard brain is not ready to do. And sometimes maybe it just needs more time to cook, whatever the reason. I find that's when the shame kicks in. And uh, that's huge. Thank you for that observation.
Hmm.
So I think that's an awesome, awesome example, right? Because it's not just the thing on the surface,
Yeah.
right? So if we got into a discussion or you got into one with yourself about like, does it need to be perfect? Why does it need to be perfect? Is it really that blah, blah, blah? What if it wasn't? Right? Like at some point that you'd just run into a dead end where you're like, yeah, and also I still am going to overdo this because you
Hmm.
haven't gotten to the next thing, which is it's not about this task. It's about avoiding or delaying the more feared task.
Yeah.
Mhm,
That's the
mhm,
Yeah.
truth.
And it's
mhm.
performative productivity too, right? Because
Hmm.
as soon as I'm really busy trying to make this thing great and practice my art and craft,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look like I'm really doing something, right?
Yeah.
And so I get away with that sort of the facade of productivity when in fact,
No,
the
yeah.
duck under the surface is,
Yeah.
just trying to grow a third leg, right? Like that's uh the performative productivity is, I
So,
think, the thing we
Pete,
need to be aware of.
you're
Hmm.
telling me that when I was cleaning my house and avoiding my taxes, that's what I was doing?
Yeah, you were
Okay,
really
because
third
I
legging
felt
it,
like I
right?
was really productive that day.
Right. Right.
Well,
Boy,
and
look at these
that's what's
bookshelves. Nobody's
right,
dusted them for, oh, I don't know, let's say a year.
which
I
is
need to do
so
those.
frustrating because on any other day, if taxes weren't around, that would be
Right.
productivity,
Right,
right?
right,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The
And
Uh,
truth
that
is
is
all I
definitely a thing, right? And what's awesome about that is it gives you cover, especially to
Mhm.
the people around you. Because if you're like watching TikTok, nobody's
Right.
going to think like, oh, I'm getting stuff done here.
research.
Right.
It's for research.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
research.
Exactly.
Oh dear, do
So,
not get your research from TikTok, people.
right.
Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, if you're, like, cleaning, you're like, "Hey, look at this. I am such a
Right.
responsible member of this household. You
Mhm,
all owe me a debt of gratitude."
Mhm.
mhm.
So, like, it makes it easier to kind of fool ourselves into the thing that we're that, like, "I'm doing okay here."
Yeah.
Or as I sometimes say, "Are you doing this or are you not doing that?" You know? So, like,
Yes.
Nikki, for you, it's not you
Mhm,
weren't cleaning. That's not what you were doing. What
mhm.
you're doing is not doing taxes. That's
Right.
really the thing that was happening there.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
you said, Pete, like if there weren't taxes, you wouldn't be doing the cleaning, you know?
No, I
Or if
wouldn't.
you were, it would
I
be
would have
some
been watching
right,
White Lotus with my daughter.
right.
Let's be real.
Exactly. Exactly. Truth comes
Yeah.
out.
The truth comes
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that actually that is actually an okay truth too, right? Because we need to be okay for
Yeah.
us having lazy days and being able to relax and have some downtime. And I see that a lot too, where people feel guilt around that.
Mhm.
And so that balance is important that we put that in there as well. You don't have to be productive all the time.
Yeah. And and that's a real thing of feeling like I can do this because I just can.
Hmm.
As opposed to that sort of guilty feeling of I have so much I should be doing, but I can't muster the motivation. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to watch White Lotus, but you feel guilty doing it because you know that you're behind the ball, right? So some of this sort of productivity is not just about being more productive. It's also about this bigger thing of kind of like living a good life, right? A life that's sort of meaningful and interesting, and that there is room to just screw around on the couch and watch TV.
I love that.
Yeah. How
stuff.
many times does it boil down to, as complicated as we make it in our heads, all of these issues, how many times does it boil down to the lesson is you have to learn to be okay with who you are in any given moment?
Yeah. I mean, there's real truth in that.
And you are okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. The book, Ari, comes out. I missed most of the first half of this conversation because I had to go buy it. I have it pre-ordered on my Kindle, and so I had a credit card issue. Don't worry about it. It's fine, you guys. I worked it all out. And now I have it. I posted in the link. People, go get this book. Is there going to be an audiobook? Are you doing it?
There is. There is. So 2 days from now, I'm going to the recording studio to record, and then next week also. So, there's
you're
going to
so
be an
lucky.
audiobook as well.
I know.
Yeah.
So lucky. So brave. You're so brave. Have you done your books before?
I did not. Somebody else did my last one, and I think they were fine. But I'm going to do this one. So we'll see how it goes.
I love it. I can't wait. It's you I want in my head reading this book. Ari, it's you. I want my buddy Ari Tuckman reading me bedtime stories.
And that's why I wanted to do it. I wanted it to like be in my voice and my inflection, and and I've done enough of this stuff so people know me. So I think that was also important. And I think I also didn't really know how easy it was. You just find a good recording studio. They do all the sound, they do the editing, the files, and whatever. So
That's great.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Cannot wait. This is the and let's just say Marcy Caldwell did the illustrations on the book, so that's a reason to also get the ebook to get the illustrations. What a delightful pair of friends of this show. Ari, congratulations. It's so thrilled for you to have another one in the can, and for coming back here. We're so grateful to you and your wisdom every single time. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. It's always, one of the nice things is like after you finish, you guys know this, right? After you finish writing a book, then you're like, now I have time to go out and like hang out with my friends like this.
For sure.
This is the prize. You've earned it. And thank you everybody for downloading and listening to this show. We appreciate your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to the conversation, we're heading over to the Show Talk channel in the Discord server. You can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level or better at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer and Ari Tuckman, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.